Tom Kozlowski, Goz with you here on 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. And yeah, we know Albany and Buffalo, the upstate New York teams, are kicking off their college football season tonight. But also tonight, two other upstate New York teams, Colgate and Syracuse, kick off their season inside the Carrier Dome. And on the call for that game, ESPN broadcast, you can see him here locally as well. Doug Sheman joins us on the phone lines. 7 o'clock kickoff tonight in the Dome. And Doug, game one for the new head coach, Dino Babers. What can we expect from this offense?
Well, guys, he says it's going to be as fast a football as you're ever going to see on turf. And he's trying to turn the Carrier Dome into a great home field advantage as it was back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And he's going to try and energize the fan base, not just by winning, but by winning with lots of points. And his track record the last couple of years at Bowling Green and before that as an assistant at Baylor was putting up record-setting numbers. And so he wants his football team to have as many as 90 offensive snaps in a game.
Wow.
And so no huddle, just flying by the seat of their pants and trying to engage the fans by not only winning, but putting a lot of points on the board.
From you guys' perspective in the broadcast booth, are you going to have that little clock there that sees how fast between snap to snap that Syracuse offense is going to be going? And for broadcasters, you guys got to be ready to go. It could be 10 seconds and boom, it's back on.
Yeah, it's funny, guys. The rhythm of calling college football games has changed so much over the last 20 years, where it always was you had the ability to tell a story between each snap or to recap what had just happened, and if you're doing television, to be able to show a replay. But with this style of football, you just don't have that ability to do it. So I'm doing the game with former New England Patriot Matt Chatham, and he's got to pick his spots. We've got to keep it flying and keep it moving.
ESPN broadcaster Doug Sheman joins us here on the phone lines, 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. He'll be on the call for ESPN for the Syracuse-Colgate game that kicks off tonight. Now, more likely to happen to that offense for Syracuse, to see it run crisply and these guys going to be ready to go, or a lot of blunders, especially for it being the first game for the Orange in this new offense?
Well, I think we're going to see both. And, you know, Coach Babers is already trying to tell people we're going to have our biggest jump year two because there's so much new. He doesn't want to get expectations too high. I mean, when you're striving to take 90 snaps in a game, you're going to have mistakes. I mean, there's just no way around it, especially as the personnel gets used to it. But with that said, it also gives you more opportunities to have big plays. So I think you'd be foolish to think that they were going to be a well-oiled machine on week one against Colgate. But, I'm optimistic, and in part of that is because I grew up in Central New York and I'm also a Syracuse grad. So I hope that the learning curve is not so big.
Absolutely. I'm rooting for that as well. But we see in these matchups FBS versus FCS teams. A lot of times it's just those words. All of them go away when they hit the field, especially for Syracuse the past few years. Syracuse won a game against Villanova a few years ago, but they needed a touchdown pass from their punter and a missed kick from the Wildcats in overtime, a chip shot to win that game. Then back in 2011 when they played Rhode Island, they needed a walk-on wide receiver named Mike Acchione, who had never played in a college football game before as a senior, to catch the game-winning touchdown. Could Colgate pose that same type of threat to the Orange tonight?
Absolutely. I mean, I had Colgate last year in the NCAA tournament. They won 2 tournament games for only the second time in their program history, so they made it to what would be the equivalent of the Elite Eight in the FCS level of Division I college football. And, guys, they've got almost everybody back. So while we don't know for sure what we're going to get out of Syracuse, we do know what we're going to get out of Colgate, and they are a team to be reckoned with. Now, with that said, you know, you're talking apples and oranges a little bit in terms of the recruiting ability, even though Syracuse has slipped to the bottom of the pack and the back of the pack of the Power 5 recruiting races. But still, there's nobody on the Syracuse roster who is being pursued by Colgate, and there's nobody on the Colgate roster coming out of high school who is being pursued by Syracuse. So there is always that inherent physical talent gap that makes you think that the FBS team should never lose to the FCS team. But we've seen it too many times, and you pointed out the 2 most recent illustrations for Syracuse where by the skin of their teeth they didn't get upset like that. Now, last year, Syracuse opened up the season at home against Rhode Island and handled them real well. Whether that translates at all for tonight's game? I don't think so, because, again, Colgate's really good. URI was not so good.
Doug Sheman, join us here on the phone lines, 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. And from that Colgate sense, and you laid it out very well there, that it's a good team, a lot of returning starters. I think above 15 returning starters for that team coming into the matchup tonight. Is it a style of offense that might give Syracuse trouble? Is it a defensive scheme? What in particular might pose some problems to the Orange tonight?
I think just the efficiency of a mature football team. It doesn't matter what scheme you're running. If you run it well, you should be successful. And so Colgate has that. And Colgate, their players know how to win. They have gone on the road. The game I did, that was at James Madison last year, where Colgate went down there in front of almost 20,000 people. I mean, they draw like crazy for that FCS program down there in Virginia. And they went into that hostile environment and took it to them and won a national tournament game. And so I don't think coming into the Dome and whatever the crowd winds up being tonight, whether it's 30,000 or if, the new coaching regime energizes enough folks to get into the Dome to get over 40,000, I don't think it's going to necessarily faze Colgate because they've played FBS opponents before and they've succeeded in the highest level of FCS playoff.
Doug, give us a little schedule layout for you, because not only is it exciting for us here in the Capital Region to hear where you're broadcasting games, but you're also Central New York. I grew up in a similar area I did, so seeing you on ESPN always gets me excited. Where are we going to see Doug Sheman again down the line this fall?
Well, Gaz, as a proud Jordan Elbridge High School alumnus, I will be at Temple next week. Temple plays home against Stony Brook next Saturday, and then the following Saturday I'll be back at the Carrier Dome for a Week 3 game between the Orange and South Florida.
He's one of the best ESPN broadcasters. You can see him locally here in Albany, Doug Sheman. Doug, best of luck on tonight's broadcast. And for the rest of the season, take care and go Salve still over Jordan Elbridge for all these years.
Oh, go Eagles. Come on, guys.